At dusk, a sergeant in full battle dress enters our room and demands that we follow him to carry out an assignment. A few minutes later, we stand in front of the captain and listen in amazement to his words. "I am very sorry that I had to pull you out of bed," he says somewhat nervously. "But you must take 30 men immediately to a bridge in the vicinity and either drive the French guerrillas away or destroy them. Briller, you are the oldest and will take charge of the group. There is a truck in the yard. The men are already loaded. Sergeant Wall knows the way and will point it out. Do a good job and report to me immediately when the assignment has been completed." Silently, we mount the truck and hold tightly to the back of the cab. Someone hands us automatic pistols and steel helmets. The motor whines as the noisy truck rolls out of the yard and takes a westward course. During the trip, we talk over the assignment. None of us has participated in guerrilla warfare. Briller decides to take the truck within 200 meters of the bridge and approach the objective from both sides of the street. Wouldn't it be wise to set up the available machine gun on top of the truck's cab to provide cover when we leave the truck? I ask, recognizing the weakest point of his plan. Right, I was just going to mention that. In fact, I will go further and order the machine gun to spray the bridge with a burst as soon as the truck stops, since we will not be able to leave the truck without a certain amount of noise. And I don't want to show the guerrillas any consideration. Besides, it may be an easy game for us if they realize immediately that we mean business. Briller verbalizes his thoughts. That's a good plan, Briller, Hocker agrees. The fireburst can still challenge any return fire, and we will be able to assess their numbers, weapons, and positions. After we reach an agreement on how the mission is to be carried out, we instruct Sergeant Wall through the rear window of the cab. A little later, the driver turns off the motor and lets the truck roll nearly in complete silence. We reach our goal. The alleged occupied bridge lies like a phantom in front of us. "Fire at will," Briller orders the machine gun unit. The tracer ammunition racks across the bridge like fiery lightning. At the same time, we leave the truck in 2 equal groups, one to the left and the other to the right of the vehicle, which immediately retreats backward. Pressed flat on the ground, we await enemy fire. Minutes pass, but our opponent does not respond. On the right side of the street, I give orders to leapfrog forward, so that no one is exposed to the enemy without fire protection. As we come within 40 yards of the bridge, Briller, according to our plan, shoots a flare over the bridge, and shortly afterward the entire objective is bathed in a ghost-like light. But still, there is no enemy to be seen. Cautiously, I make my way across the street to speak with Briller about the confusing situation. "What do you think of this shitty war?" he greets me, somewhat disappointed with the conduct of the invisible French. "There is nothing we can do, old man. We have to get the bridge behind us," I answer with a parched throat. "I would like to know where those damned scoundrels are hiding." He seems to be asking himself more than me. "There are only 2 possibilities, Briller. Either the boys left long ago, or they want to have at us on the bridge." "You are probably right," he indicates. "Let's wait another 10 minutes, then we will push ahead onto the bridge, unless something happens in between. In the meantime, perhaps we can bring the machine gun into position," I counsel him. "That's okay," he answers calmly. "I will send the right group forward so that you can give me fire cover. Then I plan to be the first one on the bridge with my men. Let me know when they start firing at you." "Good, Briller. But where is Hocker?" I ask him. "I have him positioned at the rear so that they don't attack us from behind," he answers quietly. Quickly, I cross the road back to my men and pass the word that the machine gun crew should report to me as soon as they come forward. Perfect silence reigns on both sides of the lonesome bridge. It is 11:20 p.m. We are pained by a tormenting thirst. In our hurry, no one thought about bringing anything to drink. Then, on the other side of the bank, 2 shadows move on the bridge. Damn it, they didn't even give us a pair of night field glasses. Quickly, I send a man to Briller and inform him of my observations. "Wait and continue to observe," is his response. I concentrate my gaze on the bridge, but the shadows do not move anymore. Do they want to blow the bridge into the air? Who would be served by that? The Americans are moving forward and badly need the crossing. We are in retreat and cannot do without it. and the French cannot have any interest in destroying bridges in their homeland for no reason. I continue to spin the thread further. If they are partisans assigned to protect the bridge, then only the Germans could blow it up behind them to hold back the Americans. Under these circumstances, there is nothing more we can do than take the bridge immediately, since the partisans could fire on a lonely motorcycle rider from ambush and endanger the retreat of other German units, or at least interrupt the connections. After these considerations, I make my way back to Brille to share my thoughts with him. Perhaps you are right, but still, we should not act in haste and fall into their trap. I don't want to cause any unnecessary danger for anyone. That is why my intentions are to wait a little longer. It is possible they will lose their nerve and show themselves, and we can attack immediately, he explains to me, in a voice indicating an awareness of his authority in the situation. Returning to my men again, the machine gun crew reports to me. Together, we bring the weapon into position. Suddenly, a flare rises from across the way. Nothing moves after it lights up. Finally, after about 10 minutes, 2 figures appear on the bridge. Slowly and cautiously, they come toward this bank of the river. Staring through the darkness, I see Brille and his men creeping forward. At nearly the same time, friend and enemy reach the edge of the bridge. Seconds later, Brille's men seem to grow out of the ground, and faster than panthers, they move toward their opponents, knocking them off their legs and dragging them to the left embankment. That went well, he giggles happily. Come and see the 2 prisoners. Keep the bridge in sight and stomp on every ant that you discover on it. I order the man with the machine gun and follow Brille across the street. Surrounded by our comrades, 2 Frenchmen between the ages of 30 and 40 sit on the edge of the road and quietly consider their fate. In response to our question of how many they are and what assignment they had, they speak something that none of us can understand. Where are their weapons? I ask Brille, whose attention is now focused on the bridge. They were probably lost during the fight. We could not find anything in their pockets except for cigarettes and a few cents. A private first class answers me. Then we must look for them, because only with the weapons can we prove they were up to something. I turn to Brille. We will take a look as soon as it is light, he whispers to me, and at the same time prevents one of the prisoners from lighting a cigarette. Was this fellow so poorly trained that he does not know how far someone can see a burning match or a cigarette in the night, we ask ourselves? Or is he a fanatic who is willing to direct the fire of his comrades on himself in order to destroy all of us? In a lively discussion, we consider these questions and come to the conclusion that neither of these 2 possibilities applies to him. The man is neither a hero nor dumb. Either their accomplices took off, or these 2 are completely alone, Brille determines. Then he should stand on the road and light a cigarette so that we will know what we are dealing with, is my opinion. And the Frenchman is told that he can smoke on the street. Without any reluctance, he follows our direction, and in the middle of the street, he lights a cigarette. With the cigarette, he stands in the direction of the other side of the river, which we observe from our safe covering. Minutes pass, but nothing happens. Let's go, Brille orders. Now let's go across the bridge and see if the devil is waiting for us on the other side. Quickly we select 5 men from the 2 groups. While Brille and his men immediately step onto the bridge, my men and I follow 20 yards behind on the right side, ready to offer fire cover. Undisturbed, we reach the other side of the river. On the right side of the street stands a little house, lonesome and dark, to which my men and I march immediately while Brille covers our action. Carefully, we surround the house and stand in the yard in front of the back entrance. Attentive to all the sounds of the night and from within the house, I slowly push down the door handle. It resists and only gives way with a terrible noise from inside. Silently, we push ourselves into the hall, where we are surrounded by complete darkness. I light a match to get a quick orientation. A staircase with 5 steps leads into a kind of lobby with 3 doors which apparently branch off into rooms. Quickly, I slide to the middle door and shove it open, dropping to my knees as I do so with the automatic revolver ready to fire. Tension-loaded seconds pass, but there is no sign of the enemy. Still, from somewhere else, the sound of human voices can be heard. Anxiously, I light another match and enter the room. In the flickering light, I quickly look around. Except for the usual furniture of a cheap room, whose table has wine bottles and half-filled glasses, there is nothing noteworthy. Hesitantly, I grope for the light switch and suddenly stand in a brightly lit room. Disgusted but relieved, I breathe in the cold cigarette smoke that hangs in the room. Within minutes, the other rooms are searched by my men. No human soul is to be found. I believe I heard voices from the cellar. The soldier who remained posted at the entrance calls. "Search the cellar," I order, and stick a cigarette in my mouth. Before I have inhaled twice, I hear the cracking of splitting wood, and immediately afterward a woman's scream. With a few steps, I am in the cellar and stand in front of two men and a woman, who continue to kiss the cheeks of their liberators. In broken German, they report their misfortune. They are refugees from Saint-Lô and wanted to go to relatives in Romilly. Their wagon was stopped by 5 Frenchmen near the bridge, and they were forced to get out. They were accused of collaborating with the Germans and locked up in the cellar. A short time later, they heard their wagon leave and the steps of 2 men who returned to the house. Some time later, I inform Briller in a few words about what took place in the house. With that, we have fulfilled our assignment, and we can return home confidently. They are not guerrillas, but prowling thieves who seek to enrich themselves at the expense of others during the chaos of war. Briller concludes, and assigns 4 men to secure the bridge, after which we withdraw. We climb on the truck and return to our lodging, where Briller reports to Captain Tolte and delivers the 2 prisoners. It is exactly 3:40 a.m. as we reach the street and search for our quarters. A new day spreads its grey, dusky light. In front of the troop quarters they have set up a machine gun. Mounted on a table, its steel blue barrel points threateningly into the surroundings. The entire building is surrounded by lounging soldiers. I have never seen a picture like this of the German army, and I imagine it looks like the revolutionaries of 1918. We observe a strange officer who has buckled on his pistol like a butcher and is arguing with several sergeants on the open street, while numerous privates stand around grinning. Driven by disgust, a few minutes later we stand before Captain Tolte and ask to speak with him. "What do you wish?" he asks, friendly, as his eyes flash from one of us to the other. "We would like to know what the plans are, and if you can't tell us, we want to ask you to let us go so that we can join up with a fighting unit," I insist. Slowly raising his head, his eyes glide across our faces, and he prepares to speak. "I have the assignment to organize the rest of the 77th Grenadier Division and whoever else turns up in this area into an emergency battalion. This unit will be used in and around Paris in case of unrest. In a few days we will have between 600 and 800 men and the necessary equipment. Sergeant Briller will take over the machine gun platoon, you the heavy mortar platoon, and Sergeant Hocker the sharpshooter platoon." As we agree with him, he continues, "Our emergency battalion will be completely motorized. Platoon leaders will have either a motorbike or a personal car. I am sure that in a short time we will have everything and can then go to work. I hope that you will help me with this assignment, and beginning tomorrow or the day after tomorrow bring some order to this wild herd. Does anyone have any questions?" he asks to end the briefing. "Yes," I say. "How much time do you think we have, Captain, to accomplish this?" That question is well justified given the situation at the front. According to rumour, the Americans are moving against Versailles, and I admit that we are in a race against time. But I assure you that I have good connections with those above, and will be informed in plenty of time about any changes in our situation." He smiles, convinced. "What would you do if we requested that you let us go?" I ask in dead seriousness. "Reject it, gentlemen, since I need you badly," he says in closing, and raises his hand in salute. "How does it look as far as clothing goes for this special company?" I turn to the Sergeant Major after the meeting. "It arrived yesterday and is on the 2nd story. Take what you need and leave me in peace." On the road, a bus fully occupied by German military women rolls toward the east. At the corner of a house, a soldier is in the process of selling a pair of brand-new army boots to a Frenchman. Furiously, I go toward the 2. "You filthy bum, selling shoes which German women and girls have provided for us in a hail of bombs so that we don't have to run around barefoot. Don't you have enough money, especially when everything here is furnished free?" "You are right, Sergeant." He excuses himself. I did not think that far, he explains politely and overwhelmed with regret, something totally uncommon for this bunch. Take the boots back immediately to where you got them, and don't let me catch you doing anything like this again. I shove him away from me. The machine gun crew sits in front of the quarters and dozes out of boredom. A brutal heat weighs heavily upon the streets and houses. But still, the heavy vehicles of the German army thunder toward the east. Are they returning home to the Reich or going home rich? I ask myself, as I stare at the mountain of baggage perched on the cabin of each vehicle. Where do I get a pistol? I ask at the clerk's office. They are in the weapons room, in case you are used to getting them out of the toilet, the staff sergeant answers ironically. Thank you for the information. I did not expect that in your pigsty. I shoot back and go in search of the weapon room. This opportunity takes me pretty well through the entire building. In the yard, in the rooms, and in the hall. Everywhere the comrades are drinking or speaking with the refugees, whose identities no one bothers to investigate. Nowhere is any order visible. Discipline remains only out of old habit. Finally, I reach the so-called weapons room. How about a pistol for me? I ask the corporal in charge of the weapons, who is not thrilled with my disturbing his noon nap. You are in luck. There is still one here, he indicates, and lays a Luger P08 pistol on the table. Is there any ammunition, or should I just throw it at the enemy? I ask in a bad mood. No, you get 60 rounds and an ammunition case. You just have to give me your sold book so that I can register it. The corporal finds the once common tone among comrades. How do things look with weapons for the entire battalion? I ask after I have completed all the formalities. This machine gun and the one in front of the house and a few hand weapons are all that we have received in the last 8 days. He gestures sluggishly. But is there the possibility that we will get the necessary weapons in the next few days? I ask, somewhat upset at his stoic quietness. I drive to Paris nearly every day and ask what we are supposed to receive, but I tell you freely, either they don't want to give us anything to shoot, or they really don't have anything more and they should end this shitty war. He answers angrily. Here, have a smoke, comrade, and don't upset yourself, I say, departing. At 8 o'clock, under orders from the captain, we begin to divide the lethargic men into platoons and units. The men follow our orders with resistance. There are only a few among them who wear any decorations. When a division goes under, the only survivors are the baggage handlers, ammunition carriers, and a few clerks. But we go ahead and divide them. Paper is so patient. It does not make a difference if the term marksman stands next to the name of someone who only knows the end of a rifle from hearsay. About 10 o'clock, we know what is up. Of the 91 men, 23 are trained for the machine gun and 18 for the mortar. Of the 5 sergeants, 2 appear to be good platoon leaders. We have 44 rifles, 28 pistols, 4 automatic pistols, and 2 machine guns. After we are finished, the captain orders the men dismissed. Officers and non-commissioned officers stand in a half-circle around the company commander who has no company. I observe the 2 officers carefully. The captain makes a good and trustworthy impression, even though he does not have much frontline experience. The lieutenant is not completely unknown to me, and is as conceited as a peacock. Despite his Iron Cross First Class, I do not believe that he is the hero he loves to play. In the shadow of the 2 men stands the payroll clerk with a stomach like a beer keg. A spiteful expression lies on his obese face. I don't like the man, even though fat people are generally known as jolly fellows. As you have seen for yourself, the captain crushes his cigarette as he begins to speak. The men are in need of retraining. We will immediately take on a small training exercise so that the men can have their confidence with the weapons restored, and in order to keep them off the streets. Whoever comes for duty under the influence of alcohol is to report to me immediately regardless of who he is. That is all for the moment. Thank you. Promptly at 2 p.m. our duty begins. For a full hour I explain the 98K rifle to the mostly older soldiers. With horror, I observe the inexcusable ignorance of the men who wear the rank of private first class and corporal on their field jackets, but who have only the slightest familiarity with the simplest weapon of the German army. Still, they grin arrogantly and disturb my efforts. From 3 p.m. until 4 p.m., the same thing happens with the mortar crew. Suddenly no one claims to have been trained with the weapon, or at least that it is many years since they have had it in their fingers, what the soldiers call the grenade gulper. The whole sad affair makes me sick, especially since I do not have the necessary tools to demonstrate the proper procedures. Finally, I am able to keep only a few of the men from falling asleep. "You couldn't even attack a shithouse with these people." Briller expresses the opinion of all after our first training session with this mob. In order to dissipate our worries a little bit and to avoid a drinking bout, we friends decide to take a walk to the airport. We find time to observe the stream of refugees as well as the retreat of the German Air Force companies. Here and there, personal vehicles appear in which high-ranking German officers sit with their painted ladies. Our attention is drawn particularly to the large suitcases, as these elite leaders move eastward, intending to take their precious lives to safety. Never before in this awful war have I had the possibility to glimpse behind the wavering front. But at this moment it is fully clear to me that the rats are abandoning a sinking ship. After a slow walk, we reach the airport. An anti-tank gun stands at the entrance. The conversation with the men there is more discouraging. They await orders any moment to blow up the place with all its remaining fuel. An inner, overpowering unrest seizes me as I take it all in. The collapse of the front is apparent. I only wonder quietly to myself why the Americans don't launch a quick breakthrough to Paris. We return earlier than intended. I meet the captain and ask to speak to him to share our observations. "Don't worry, my friend. The Führer will soon end the retreat. By the way, if we are in actual danger, I will give you plenty of notice." He pats me comfortingly on the shoulder. "Isn't it time that we join up with a battle-ready group?" I press him. Angrily, he forbids any interference in his affairs. Bristling with anger, the three of us sit on the terrace near the swimming pool. "Here, Sergeant." An old front soldier puts a bottle of champagne next to us and pats me trustingly on the back. "Have a drink. Your throat must be dry from the long instruction. Long live the 98K rifle." Despite my low mood, this honest expression of soldier humour brings me to laughter. He then affably whispers with a heavy tongue in my ear, "Watch out for the officers, and above all for the well-fed pay-pig. They will leave us sitting in the shit when things get hot." You could be right, I think, after the man has left, and I drink the lukewarm champagne until the "kiss my arse" attitude comes over me. After dark, we move to the flat roof of the building and watch the flickering artillery explosions to the west. Looking to the east, we follow enthusiastically the fiery tail of a V-1 rocket travelling rapidly in a northwest direction. For a long time, we discuss how much the new kind of rocket weapon can influence the outcome of the war. Finally, we take the path homeward with mixed feelings. We stand for a long time on the sidewalk because a long line of autos, horse-drawn wagons and buses makes crossing dangerous. Everything appears to have been set in motion, but our schedule calls for training with the machine gun. At 8 a.m., the captain takes roll. After a second count, there is no agreement with the number we had yesterday. 1 sergeant and 9 men are missing, whose names are quickly determined. The captain, with a red, angry face and accompanied by the sergeant and pay clerk, goes to the clerk's office to initiate a report for court-martial proceedings against the fugitives. We 3 sergeants divide the group and begin the technical instruction, which the lieutenant supervises without any interest. The entire theatre makes me sick and seems so senseless, just as if when a ship is sinking, someone wants to learn quickly how to swim in a bathtub. But even with purposeless activities, the hours of the clock turn, and once again it is lunchtime. After lunch, the 3 of us lie down for a nap. The captain has informed us our presence is not necessary for the afternoon training. He has changed the training schedule, and between 3 p.m. and 4 p.m. he will instruct the entire battalion about the meaning of the oath of loyalty in general and the specific consequences of desertion. In contrast to this morning, there are no vehicles to be heard on the road. There is barely a stream of refugees now. In the middle of our friendly conversation, a private enters and gives us the order from the captain. "The battalion will move out tonight toward the east. All platoon leaders are to report to the office." We look at each other. The last ones are bitten by the dogs, I say in the silence after the man has left, and we get up to carry out the orders. When we arrive at the office, the captain receives us in suppressed agitation. Without any digression, he tells us that the battalion must be ready to march at 8 p.m. What provisions and clothing we can take are to be loaded on the 3 horse-drawn wagons. The rest is to stay where it is. With the unnecessary warning not to lose any time, the orders that I have never heard before as a soldier come to an end. Almost unnoticed by the French, we leave Le Bourget like thieves in the night, without song or sound. We march along both sides of the road, moving eastward toward an unknown fate as though a fist is in our neck. After a 7-hour march without incident, we land in a village and find quarters prepared for us by the officers, who naturally cover the distance in an automobile. But we must give them some credit, as during the course of the night they drove back and forth, caring for their lost group and ensuring that at each crossroads the 3 platoons stayed on the right way. Dog-tired, we all fall into the straw. Because of my long stay in the hospital, the soles of my feet are so tender after the long march they now burn like the fires of hell. The same for Brilla, so our friend Hocker must play nurse to both of us. But still, we 3 inseparable friends look for an establishment around 3 o'clock and drink a poorly cooled beer, although the thoughts of the continuing march overwhelm us with dread. After sundown, the malicious French watch us leave their village. As we march, I feel as though I'm going barefoot over hot corrugated sheet metal. But now I must be hard on myself. They told me to take a place on the vehicle, but I see so many comrades who creep along the road like they are walking on eggs, and I don't want to be the object of their cursing. Never in my entire life as a soldier have I ever demanded more from someone than I was willing to do myself. I adopted this principle from the beginning, and to this day it has served me well. In the meantime, the night has quietly laid itself over the landscape and wraps, with pity, the thrown-together hopeless heap of humanity in its dark veil. In May 1940, I first set foot on French soil with the best-equipped and best-trained army in the world. Then, the German troops overran this land with a victory march without comparison, destroying within 36 days the entire army, including the English expeditionary force that was so hard hit that their only possible salvation was the wretched flight to the fleet of ships assembled at Dunkirk. Today, 4 years later, I slip out by the dark of night toward the starting point, back in the Reich, with the bitter feeling of shame in my soul at the way the rest of my brave division has dissolved, while troops from a continent 4,000 miles away follow close on our heels. The rising sun finds us 4 kilometres before Soissons, having left the road of retreat and quartered in a little village situated only 200 metres from the great artery of traffic. It is no longer so important where we sleep, but when and for how long. A few months ago, a couple of days or nights' march like this was quite common, but many have just come from the hospital, and others were always drivers and are not used to marching. No wonder, then, that nearly everyone has to endure the march walking on injured feet, and they are so close to exhaustion that they nearly fall asleep while walking. To make matters worse, nearly everyone is wearing new boots, which in most cases were selected without thought for a long march such as this. So it is explainable why we do not arrive in a tight column, and the first ones already lie in deep sleep before the last arrive. But no one is choosy. Instead, everyone collapses, wrapped in a blanket, into the straw of any barn or shed, and within seconds finds himself beyond good and evil. After the last man is brought under a roof, the 3 of us can also find some rest. After 6 hours of refreshing sleep, Brilla shakes me awake. He stands barefoot before me with coffee, bread and butter in his hand. His field blouse is open, and his dog tags hang like a cheap medal on his hairy chest. "Let's go," he says. "Drink some coffee. We have got to go see the old man." "What does he want from us in the middle of the night?" I ask, irritated. "It is nearly 11 o'clock, and the sun is burning hot in the sky, my friend. The heat is brutal, with no breeze. The dust-covered leaves on the trees are nearly wilted in the park where we turn and stand across from the captain. Affably, he waves off our formal German salute. "Good morning," he says, and extends his hand to each of us. He is only dressed in riding pants and a shirt. His field blouse hangs over the stool on which he sits. "Please take a seat and smoke if you like," he begins, and gestures with an open hand toward the stools. "You have seen the men during the march and have observed them as closely as I have. It is clear that we must rest for a while in order not to completely ruin the feet of the men. I have made an inquiry by radio to the higher command and know that we can afford to stop for a while. The Americans are busy around Paris with our rear guard forces. By the way, we left at exactly the right time. The mob rose up in the metropolitan area the same day we left. Today we will nurse the feet of the suffering men. At 2 p.m. lunch will be distributed, and every man will receive a bottle of wine from our stock. Assign your sergeants to ensure order and discipline in the quarters. Except for officers and you men, no soldier has the right to leave the village. If any of you want to go to Soissons, you are free to do so after 5 p.m. Are there any questions?" He ends his explanation. "I thank you," he says, as we indicate there are none, and raise our right hands in salute. As necessary as the rest is, there is still a voice of warning inside me, I say in the cool dusk of the barn in which we have stretched out, protected from the glaring sun. I am not overjoyed at it either. Hocker joins my side. But the rest is absolutely necessary, you can be assured of that. The rest is no luxury, and if the situation allows it, I will praise the captain for his wisdom, Briller adds, then falls asleep almost in the same moment. With an uncomfortable feeling in my heart, I sit and look at my feet. There are no blisters. The scar on the toe is protected from harm, and the soles of my feet are very red because of the sweat working together with the tannic acid of the new boots, causing a very uncomfortable burning, which I am able to nearly eliminate by rubbing them with butter. Acting on former experience, I decide to treat my boots with urine in order to deal with the tannic acid. I get some oats from one of the drivers and fill my boots with them because the oats absorb the urine, and in doing so will expand the narrow part of the boots. After I ease my conscience with this primitive method, I lie down to sleep. Freshly bathed and clean-shaven, we set out to Soissons, where at exactly 6 p.m. we tip the first glass of cognac. The dive in which we find ourselves is full of thirsty soldiers and women. Mixed in are Frenchmen, who cover their heads with berets while their ears are tuned into the conversations of the tipsy soldiers, so that the bits and pieces of information can be transmitted to their collaborators, who will put the mosaic together and for which the German soldiers will pay with their blood. The smell of sweat and cheap perfume hangs in the room. As the bartender fills our glasses, I instinctively feel someone staring at me and turn around. I am attracted to two girls whose eyes seem to radiate a mysterious fire. Without resistance, I move in response to the invitation to the girls' table and bend to them, questioning. "Please sit down by me," one whispers in good German. "I am so alone." In amazement, I look at her and sit down in the chair next to her. "You are alone in the middle of all this activity?" I ask somewhat sarcastically, and observe her without restraint. "Don't you like me?" she asks as she observes my critical look. "Let's not talk about that," I evade her question. "But you said that you were alone. What is that about?" "It may be that you consider it a lie, but it is still true," she twitters pleasantly, and smooths her dress flat over her thighs. "And what do you expect of me?" I ask bluntly, because this time I am really in doubt. "I want to talk with someone who has understanding. I want to escape the constant fear of the impending disaster," she answers, and looks deeply into my eyes. "And that is why you come to a place like this and pick me out of the crowd?" I ask, shaking my head. "We both may be related souls. Just as you came through the door, you made a distinct impression on me, and the wish to speak with you became stronger and stronger the more I observed you," she explains, with a light vibration in her voice. Fighting back my stimulated vanity, I inhale deeply from my cigarette and see Hocker coming toward the table. "We are moving on, Helmut," he grins at me. "The innkeeper does not have any more ice and all the drinks are warm." "Now or in a minute?" I ask, looking at him angrily. "Immediately, if it is all right with you," he replies stubbornly and stands like a bull, his gaze lost in the notch of the blouse of the girl I am speaking with. "Then there is nothing more for us here," I turn to the girl and get up. May I come with you? She asks quickly, her eyes resting on mine. Undecided, I glimpse at Hocker, who gives me a no sign. There is really no purpose, I say helplessly. My time is short. Aren't you going to stay in the city? She asks. We don't know, I respond, disenchanted, looking at her sharply. You just said that your time is short. She pushes unmercifully further. Our leave time, mademoiselle? I explain with a prudent smile. Oh, then I can visit you tomorrow? If... Yes, on the moon, Hocker interjects energetically, and pulls me by the arm to the site where Brilla is waiting. She is not a typical bee. Brilla immediately receives me on the street. I observed her closely, Helmut, and I suggest that we inform the security service. That beast can do all kinds of damage. The only thing we lack is proof, my friend. Besides, I don't think we want to spend this evening with such gangsters when that is their assignment anyway, to protect us from such women. I talk him out of it. Man, she surely must have fire in her behind, Hocker mixes in, grinning from ear to ear. It would really be too bad to let the security service squash such a volcano. Let's forget this nonsense. I end the fruitless discussion. If she really is an agent, then she can only be a very small cog, since there are not any great secrets among the men in this joint. Still undecided where we can spend a cosy evening in this strange town, we discover a hotel in a side street that suits our taste. In the dining room, we find a comfortable corner and sit down. Plates are set on white-covered tables, and the attentive waitress asks immediately what we would like. Quickly, we reach an agreement over the menu and order 3 beers, a bottle of red wine, 3 beefsteaks, French fries, a green salad, and oysters for dessert. The girl laughs as she takes our order, then hurries to the bar. The establishment is sparsely occupied, while in the connecting room, into which we can see through the opened folding doors, soldiers and girls are listening to the blare of a jukebox, while civilians temperamentally discuss the situation over an aperitif. Just as we finish our cigarettes, the girl brings in the food, then disappears, but not without first wishing us a charming meal. Concentrating on the food, I do not notice that in the meantime the locale is filled with new guests, until a familiar girl's voice asks if she can sit with us. Glancing up, I recognize the girl with whom I spoke previously in the inn. Slightly embarrassed, she stands at our table looking at me with her night blue eyes. Unconsciously, my hand makes a gesture of invitation, in response to which she sits down without saying a word. Somewhat nervously, I reach for my glass, and in doing so catch a glimpse of Brilla's face, in which I detect a twitch of rejection. Silently, we busy ourselves with our food, but everyone knows that each one's thoughts are on the mysterious girl sitting next to me, who has once again forced herself between us with her ample charms working on me. Tenderly, her hand caresses my hair. Come with me, she whispers alluringly. The golden beams of the sinking sun slant into the room. The enticing words of the mysterious girl echo in me. My blood rushes through my veins and pounds at my temples. In one swallow, I empty my glass, reach for my cigarettes, and stand up. As if bitten by a tarantula, Brilla jumps up. "Stop, Helmut! Don't do that!" he cries angrily and clings to my arm. "What is the matter, Brilla? Am I a baby who needs a nurse?" I ask, irritated. "Let me bring this affair to an end, if you please. I will watch out for myself." "Good," he says harshly and turns to the girl. "Where do you want to go with my friend? What concern is it of yours? Didn't he just tell you he is old enough to take care of himself?" She hisses back and looks at him with a mean expression on her pretty face, which leaves me with a cold feeling. Brilla stands broad-shouldered in front of her, his arms resting on his hips. "You disappear now at once and don't let me ever see you here again. Otherwise I will call the SS." He growls at her determinedly and touches his pistol with his left hand. As if hit by a whiplash, the girl quivers at these terrible words from this enemy stranger. Slowly she turns on the heel of her brown pumps. With veiled eyes she touches me with her little delicate hand. "Farewell, mon chéri," she whispers and turns toward the door. A cloud of her alluring perfume lingers as I watch her until the door snaps closed. Disappointed, I fall into the chair and consider my comrades with discord in my heart. Hocker sits with a mask-like face, nervously sucking at his cigarette, while Briller sits in the corner with a gloomy disposition, blinking at the last sun rays of the day. Clearing my throat, I grasp the bottle and pour the rest into the glasses. Briller's fist comes crashing onto the table. "The damned women are throwing the best comradeship to the dogs," he cries with a raging red face. "Take it easy, you good old-timer. We have not come to that yet. While I rarely interfere with your activities, I know that you did it out of concern for me, and perhaps I should be thankful to you." I laugh, somewhat forced, while my eyes meet those of my friends. "Let's forget the witches and let the ghosts rest. 3 cognacs and fast," I whisper into the ear of the passing waitress. Understandingly, she nods to me and hurries away. 2 seconds later, she puts the glasses before us on the table. "These were to be for other guests, but I believe you need them more urgently," she whispers into my ear. "Okay, down with it, guys." I toast my friends, and 3 skilled hands guide the glasses to our mouths. Soldiers sit at all the tables with women, playing the eternal game of the sexes. A tall, drunken blonde is shown the door by the owner just as 3 sergeants enter the room, looking in amazement at the blonde. She throws her arms around the neck of the first one, kissing him so that his entire face is covered by her cheap lipstick. When he finally frees himself, his grotesque appearance brings out laughter in those present. All 3 appear to be in a good mood, and when they approach our table and ask to sit down, we invite them without hesitation. "Are you stationed here?" I ask to say something to the new arrivals. "No," one informs us. "We are on the march toward Holland." "And you?" He looks at me anxiously. "We are on a foot march to the asshole," Briller throws in ironically, bringing the entire circle to laughter. "Are you really going by foot?" The 3 wonder simultaneously. Hocker responds with a brief history of our experiences, and the SS men listen without interrupting. "Come with us," they suggest after Hocker finishes. "We can't let the poor devils outside sit in this lousy place," I protest indignantly. "It's way too late for that." They nod in agreement. "No, that would be a shame and unworthy of a German soldier." The youngest of them finally joins the conversation. "You 3 are courageous members of the army, but unfortunately, your type is now dying slowly but surely," the oldest states knowingly. "It's a pity about you boys. You would be in the right place with us," he adds. "I don't give a shit," Briller declares. "We had bad luck. Perhaps the sun will shine for us again. Therefore, let's drink another bottle." "Bring us another 6 beers," Briller calls to the waiter at the bar. "But we must go back to our quarters, and it is already 1 a.m., Hocker notes seriously. "Sleep here in the hotel, boys," one of the SS men suggests. "It would be dangerous to stumble the 3 miles back all alone. What do you think, Helming?" Hocker turns to me. "Let's see about a room. I don't have any desire to walk back, and it will be hard to find a ride going back in the direction of the front," I answer in resignation. "We will have one shortly," the older SS comrade responds and approaches the counter. He returns with a new bottle of cognac. "Everything is in order," he grins, satisfied. "The innkeeper will keep 3 rooms for the 6 of us, but the place closes at 3 a.m. "How is it with the bottle, comrade?" "Naturally, we will share the bill," I suggest to him. "Just drink, it's already paid for." He waves it off and skillfully pulls the cork out of the bottle. With a steady hand, he fills the glasses. "My friends call me Herbert," he says, lifting his glass and looking me kindly in the eye. "I am Erich," the second chimes in. "And you can call me Dieter, as long as you continue with your friendly face." "Then a toast, friends," I suggest, clinking the glasses. "You have already heard my name." We set our glasses down as Hocker returns. "So what is the big bad wolf doing with the child?" Herbert asks curiously. "He will eat it for sure," Hocker responds promptly, met with ringing laughter. Still standing, he gestures with his thumb toward the hall. "You should take a look at how old Briller is reeling the little one in. She's like hot lava in his hands. I'm sure she would give him her purse full of money if he would only go to bed with her," says Hocker. "I wonder who ends up marrying these women," Herbert throws in, shaking his head. "What does it matter to us?" Dieter laughs, turning his head towards the folding doors behind which Brilla sits with the girl, a fire of desire burning in Dieter's eyes. Every generation produces the kind of women they deserve. The French failed in 1940, and so did their women, Herbert states objectively. And what about us if we fail? I ask, somewhat shocked. No better, he answers, troubled, and takes a cigarette. After the First World War, when the Rhineland was occupied, mulatto children were born, he adds contemptuously. In the barroom, only 2 tables are now occupied. It's 2:10 a.m. The gloomy words still echo in us as we step behind the folding doors and are enthusiastically greeted with bottles and glasses by the girls. Anticipating, the girls skillfully make room, leaving the decision of which place that is, which partner, to us. Take the good-looking blonde, Helmut. Brilla, fully in his element, takes me by surprise and pushes me down into the only empty chair at the table. She likes you very much, he whispers with good intentions into my ear as I try to protest. Keep one thing in mind, my dear Brilla. I am used to choosing my own friends. I refuse to be pushed around and reach for the cigarettes to offer one to the blonde on my right, noticing an insulted look on her face. Are you angry? I ask, feeling some pity for her. Take it however you want. She forces a smile and reaches for my hand, holding the burning match in front of her cigarette. Inhaling the smoke deeply into her lungs, she looks at me affectionately with her slanting eyes. Do you always reject little girls like this? She asks, leaning back in her chair so that I can admire her figure. Only on the outside. Inside, I generally like them very much, I state honestly. So that's your tactic, she laughs, satisfied. You have seen through me, mademoiselle, I toast to her. I would like to treat everyone to a bottle of cognac. Brilla interrupts the conversation at the table and calls for service. The owner comes to the table with a negative gesture. We are closing, gentlemen, he says, pointing to the clock, which indicates it's 3 a.m. Avez-vous une chambre de spare? Herbert asks in fluent French. Undecided, the innkeeper plays with the gaudy ring on his little finger, while we all anxiously keep our eyes on him. With an agile tongue, Herbert speaks into his ear. Finally, they reach an agreement. We can go to the room, and he doesn't care what we do there. We can purchase drinks at the bar with hard cash, Herbert proclaims with a sovereign voice, and is rewarded with a hot kiss from his long-legged partner, who accompanies him to the bar. 10 minutes later, Herbert, Eric and I sit in my hotel room drinking with the 2 remaining girls after Brilla, Dieter and Hocker have excused themselves and their ladies for half an hour. Quietly, the blonde Blanche sits next to me on the bed in front of which we have pulled the night table, and on which we set our glasses. Herbert and Eric are squatting with the long-legged and good-looking Colette in the middle on chairs, 2 of which they have brought from their rooms. It is very hot in the room, and we decide to turn out the light and leave the blinds up, so that we can leave the window open. A little later, only the rising cigarette smoke and the clatter of glasses on the marble plate of the night table testify to our presence. Snuggled affectionately on my shoulder, Blanche's head rests as she alluringly whispers in my ear, Voulez-vous faire l'amour? I have known for a long time that this question was coming, but still I don't know what I should answer. Out of embarrassment and with an unusual mixture of pity and personal desire, I stroke her silky blonde hair. The smell of a pleasant good shampoo is noticeable, and I whisper my oui in her ear. In the silence, the creaking noise of the straining bed springs in Brilla's adjacent room penetrates our room and brings us all to laughter, relieving the tension at the same time. With 5 girls and 6 men, not even a university can reach an agreement without some compromise. But only the crazy Brilla has brought us into this situation. Finally, Brilla crosses the threshold, pulling a dark-haired female behind him into the room. What are you doing squatting around here like the disciples on the Mount of Olives? He asks cheerfully, taking a glass from the night table and offering it politely to the girl. You have to bring your own chair with you, old fellow, I instruct him after he searches the room. I will get one, twitters his darling with a voice as clear as a bell and goes lightly from the room. She is thankful, isn't she? You tired warriors. Brilla smirks proudly and tips a full glass of water into his throat. Where are the others? He turns to me while looking for a cigarette. Still in action, I growl. Then disappear with Blanche into my room. Just look at the poor girl. She's crazy with yearning, Brilla proclaims without any tact, awakening in me the wish to box his ears. Lie down in your rotten crib if you want to make prescriptions for others. I jump at him, angry. Take it easy, son, he says, amazed at my irritated tone, and sits down on the chair that the black-haired girl has brought in for him. I only intended good for you, he begins in a conciliatory tone, petting the naked leg of his bed partner, who has curled up on his lap like a cat. I'm going to get some sleep. Eric gets up, yawning. When are we to be awakened? He turns to Herbert. We have to get up around 6 a.m., he answers, frowning. Then good night, gentlemen. Don't let me disturb you. He waves tiredly as Brilla tries to hold him back. After a while, I become uncomfortable sitting on the bed. Standing on one foot, I pull off my boots and take off my field blouse while the others look at me in amazement. Do you want to get rid of us? Herbert asks, uneasy. Certainly not, I comfort him. I just can't see how I can sit on the bed when it is much more comfortable to lie down. Come, Blanche, lie down. It's really a strain to sit without a backrest, I encourage her. I can't do that. My dress will be wrinkled, she indicates, blushing like a schoolgirl. Come on, Brilla, turn the light out for a moment, and then Blanche, take off your dress. I will cover you with a blanket up to your neck if you want it. Without protest, she gets up and turns to the bed on which I am stretched out. As the light goes out, there is the rustle of clothing as Blanche undresses. Before Brilla turns the light back on, she has slipped under the cover and has me in her arms. I would willingly crawl under the cover with her, but the lurking eyes of the others forbid such action. In order to kill the rising desire, I reach for a glass and empty it in one swallow. After 10 minutes, even Herbert's girl has recognized that it could be a long session. She slips under the blanket with Blanche, and a little later both are sound asleep. We waste the time debating whether it was right or wrong for Hitler to use the Waffen-SS against the German army, until we are no longer capable of any clear thoughts, as the cognac has finally brought us to our knees. In a blur, I see Brilla totter out of the room with his ballerina just before I slide into the kingdom of dreams. This is the part 4 of the memoirs of a German soldier who was a prisoner of war. The continuation of this story will be posted soon. I kindly ask you to subscribe to this channel because your support motivates me to create more videos featuring the valuable memories of soldiers that deserve to be heard.